Welcome to the channel. My name is Douglas, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you my thoughts and opinions on which I think is better for church, the Roland V-Stage or the Nord Stage 4. Now, the last video I posted about the V-Stage, I talked about the Roland V-Stage and using it in church. Is it good for church? And the end answer is yes, it can be good for church, but which is better? Is the Roland V-Stage or the Nord Stage 4 better for a church environment? So let's talk about what we mean when we talk about, is a keyboard good for church? So number one, our sounds. Can it do piano, electric piano, synth pads, strings, some of those evolving pad sounds in the background? And then can it do organs? So if you use B3s at your church, can it fill that gap as well? There's some other little sounds that sometimes on the holidays we'll throw in some bells and things like that. But primarily piano, organ, electric piano, strings, and synth pad are your staple instruments in a church environment as a keyboardist. Now, when we look at both of these, they both have the ability to do those types of sounds. We have physical drawbars on both of these. There's a lot of similarities, pianos, electric pianos, synth pads. What it comes down to is the usability and quality of those sounds, how well they fit into the mix. And so we'll be taking a look at some of that. We'll be talking about features because when you're playing in church, you're up on stage most often, and you're having to deal with dynamics that change constantly throughout a song. So we'll be playing a song and then things will build up and then come down. So you need the ability and the agility in a keyboard to be able to make those on the fly changes really quickly to change with the environment that's changing. We also have instances where, out of the blue, the pastor will decide he's going to do, extended prayer time at the end of the service, or he's going to come up and share some verses. We have these times where we need to be flexible in what we're playing to be able to quickly call up something that's going to fit well and just provide some background music to maybe some speaking that's going on. And then as we're working with the set that we have for church, being able to lay out our sounds in a way that is very easy to move between those sounds, so we're not having to take time to load presets and all of that in between songs. But again, similar to a lot of live performance, is having things set up in a way that works well and flows well with your set list for your service or wherever you're playing live with these keyboards. And then last, on top of all of that, is we have to deal with the budget at church for our music department. So oftentimes in a budget cycle, we're not replacing keyboards every year. It's something where every few years it comes around. Well, now it's the keyboard's turn to see how are we gonna change, upgrade, replace an old, board that we have. And so we don't oftentimes have the luxury, especially in the smaller churches, to swap out keyboards all the time, unlimited funds. Oftentimes these things are budgeted. All right, we've got this amount. We have to stay within what can do the job within that budget. So I think that's one of the most important aspects as we look at these two, just because of the price difference between what you're getting. Now, the other thing that I look at when I look at a keyboard that's for church use is the investment side of it, because we're dealing with oftentimes a revolving budget where we don't have unlimited money to spend on keyboards, is when I invest in a keyboard, how long is that keyboard going to be good for? Is it going to last? Is it going to be reliable? Am I going to be able to load new sounds on it as they become available? Are there going to be upgrades to the software, the OS? And longevity, speaking on the keyboard, is it something that'll last me 5-6 years without going out of style next year? So kind of like our iPhones, they keep releasing version after version, year after year, and 5 years down the road, you're quite behind when it comes to the version of the device. And so as I look at a keyboard, is this something where I'm locking myself in because of its inability to upgrade, or is it something where it's just going to go out of style too quickly? So let's look at both of these. I'm going to play a little bit just to break up between the talking here. I have a simple sustain pedal plugged in. Let me switch over to the piano here. This is the V-Stage piano. It's AA1. Overture piano scene here on the V-Stage comes from the factory with this. And then on the Nord Stage 4, I have the triple pedal plugged in, which gives me that pedal noise and a White Grand sample. It's actually A21, the White Grand program, and no effects on this one. Oftentimes I'll throw just a little bit of stage, maybe a 3.5 on the stage reverb. I'll take my EQ, just bump that, maybe -4, +4. I'm all able to do that right from the panel here, very easy. If I want to adjust the EQ of the piano here on the V-Stage, I need to go into the menu, go over to the part EQ for the acoustic piano part, and then I can adjust the equalizer for the piano section to make that brighter or darker, whatever I feel like I need to do there. So sound-wise, let's talk about that. Again, tons of similarities between these. They're really built for stage use, and the V-Stage is very much a copy of a lot of the functionality that we have on the Nord Stage 4 with the organ section, piano, synth, organ, acoustic piano, electric piano, synth. There's some differences in layering. So on the layering side of things, the Nord Stage 4 can do 2 organs layered together, 2 pianos layered together, and 3 synths layered together, any combination of those. On the V-Stage is 1 organ in terms of the organ type and things like that. We do have the ability to do 3 different splits of our drawbars across the keybed, 1 acoustic piano, 1 electric piano, and 2 synthesizer layers. So in terms of the layering, the Nord Stage 4 wins for 2 reasons. 1, all of my layer volumes are right on the panel, rather than, for example, on the synth, where I have 2 synth layers, I have to switch with a button between the A and the B layer and then a single knob to adjust the level. So speed of adjusting levels on layers, the win goes to the Nord Stage 4. The second reason the Nord Stage 4 wins is because I can layer 2 acoustic pianos together, which I can't do on the V-Stage. And so on the Nord, I can take a regular piano and then I can very quickly make a soft piano version of that. And I have in one program, I have a sound where I can switch between a regular and a soft with the tap of a button rather than needing to go in and adjust a knob and then hope I get back to the right place when I come back to my regular piano. So the way we would accomplish that on the V-Stage is to make adjustments on the fly and then have to revert those adjustments compared to just tapping a button or tying something to my foot pedal to switch between the regular and the soft variation within that same program. So the Nord Stage 4 is just more flexible when it comes to its layering and the ability to either layer 2 acoustic pianos together or 2 electric pianos or an acoustic and an electric. It doesn't discriminate. It's 2 piano layers, and the pianos could be any type of piano, clav, EP, digital, acoustic, upright, doesn't matter. Outside of that, a lot of the features within the sections, at least from the organ and the piano sections, are very similar. They have a lot of the same type of control. You can go in and do complete piano custom builds with the piano designer on the V-Stage. At your church, I can't imagine that your volunteers are going to be going in and building their own pianos, but some people are more technical. They like that. So that is an option. I still, though, haven't found the quality of the pianos to match what the Nord has. Nords just have phenomenal samples on their pianos. I've done comparison videos, so I'm not going to dwell too much on the sounds, but from the perspective of just kind of the layering ability and the flexibility with the way that the layers are, the speed at which you can adjust the volumes, the Nord Stage 4 is definitely better in that regard. Now back on the V-Stage, we do have the ability to get a little bit more granular when it comes to the EQ side of things. So we do have a master EQ that we don't have on the Nord Stage 4. So depending on our room, we can adjust the master EQ, which is anything going out of the outputs of the V-Stage goes through the master compressor, the master EQ. Whereas on the Nord Stage 4, we'd have to set the EQ on each layer, and then that would affect what's going out of our outputs. We'd have to do that for each program. I personally haven't found the need for a master EQ because most of what I'm playing is going through front of house. they're adjusting the EQ so it sounds right in the monitors. But having that ability to set a master EQ, some people really love that feature, and the V-Stage has that ability to do that really quickly. Also within the equalizer, for each part or each layer on the V-Stage, we have a bit of a graphical EQ. We can adjust the curvature. We don't have that ability. The effects on the Nord Stage 4, while there's a lot of them and they're amazing, they don't offer quite as much adjustability within the effect itself as the V-Stage has. So for example, on the equalizer, I have my bass, my mid, and my treble, and I can adjust the frequency of the mid. On the V-Stage, we have the bass, mid, treble, sometimes two mids, and I can adjust the frequency on any one of them and the curvature. I know I'm not using the right term there on the EQ, but I have more control. Whether it's needed or not, I have more control within each effect. So compressor, I can do threshold, ratio, all of that adjustment on the V-Stage, where it's a single compressor knob on the Nord Stage 4. Now, for me personally, I don't want to have to go into a menu and monkey with settings. So when I'm playing live, I just want to tweak a knob. So maybe that's a less technical viewpoint, but I know a lot of people in a church environment just want a quick adjustment. The Nord Stage 4 has more on the panel, which makes it easier to make quick adjustments on the fly. So I think depending on how you look at it, either one could win when it comes to the adjustment ability to change the dynamics of the sound. So let's talk a little bit about that, right? So we've got this, this concept of playing a sound that maybe it's a piano, and I'm going to jump over to one of the ones I use all the time. Synth pad, piano over it. So as the song dynamics change, I can very quickly on the Nord Stage 4 change things to go along with the dynamics of the sound. So if there starts to be a little bit more dead space, I can bring more of that synth pad in. Some of it's technique in how you're playing, but having the quick adjustment ability, I think they're a draw, in my opinion, on the volume style adjustment. So on the V-Stage, we can definitely take volume, we can take the filter frequency, we can assign those. There's a great assignment page on the V-Stage to assign them to any one of our control pedals, so a volume style control pedal, the modulation wheel. And the thing we have to keep in mind though is that per layer, we have to choose one parameter per control. So maybe we have the filter frequency tied to our modulation wheel for synth layer A. On synth layer A, I can't also, at least at this time, take the volume and assign it to the modulation wheel. We would have to put the volume on a volume style foot pedal or something like that. On the Nord Stage 4, we can assign multiple parameters to a single control. So I could take filter frequency, volume, and a couple other parameters and all tie them to the modulation wheel for a single layer. So it's more flexible there, but when it comes to the assignment page on the V-Stage, it's a little bit easier to modify those parameters after you've assigned them. You can't really see a list on the screen of what you have assigned. You have to know based off of the lights which parameters are assigned. And so it's not quite as intuitive to modify those things after the fact on the Nord Stage 4, but I find that maybe it's a little bit more powerful being able to assign multiple controls on a layer to a certain thing like the modulation wheel. Also, you have these two really nice buttons on the V-Stage. They're nice, soft, big buttons that control the break and the speed of your Leslie effect. So let me switch over to the organ here. So we have these nice big buttons that we can change the speed. We could also assign that to a foot pedal, something like that. On the Nord Stage 4, we don't have those assignable buttons. So you could take those and assign them to any sort of momentary type parameter on the V-Stage, giving you a couple of extra controls that you wouldn't necessarily need to tie to a foot pedal, let's say. I can just tap a button. On the Nord Stage 4, I'd have to use foot pedals for that sort of thing. We don't have those assignable soft buttons on the Nord Stage 4. It's just a couple of things to keep in mind. I think there's pros and cons to both. For me, I prefer the Nord Stage 4 in the way that the morph assign works compared to the assignment on the V-Stage. But I think you could argue either way on that in terms of using it at church. The ultimate goal here is I should be able to tie things like the volume or even the brightness of the piano on the V-Stage to the modulation wheel, to an expression, volume, style, foot pedal, so that I can control the synth fading in and out, or the strings fading in and out while I'm playing the piano. So just some things to keep in mind there. They both can do that. It's just the assignment piece that functions a little bit differently. And if you're curious on how to use either of these, I have step-by-step video training courses on my website for both the V-Stage and the Nord Stage 4 to show you and walk you through all the essentials of these keyboards. So if that interests you, go check that out, DSoundman.com, and that'll help you really get to know these keyboards well. So in terms of features, similarities all over the place. They both can split, they both have live mode, they both have the ability to line up 8 programs and switch between them quickly. The V-Stage has more of a set list functionality, so it has scene chains where we can chain together and organize scenes to very quickly move through them. Nord Stage 4 doesn't have that, so that's a win to the V-Stage on being able to set up your set lists. On the Nord Stage 4, you just have to organize your programs within the program memory to be lined up correctly so you can move through them through your service set list. So win for the V-Stage on that piece of functionality. The rest of it is very similar in what they can do. Synth section on the Nord Stage 4 to me is more powerful, easier to tweak. I won't harp on that anymore. I think the Nord Stage 4 wins the ability to just grab and tweak pretty much everything, whereas it's maybe 60% on the V-Stage that you can do that. The rest you have to go into a menu to do. So as a live musician, as a church musician, I don't like that. I like everything out here, but that's personal preference, so take that with a grain of salt. Now, when it comes to the quality of the sounds, I think for the most part, it's a draw. They both have great sounds. The pianos are better on the Nord Stage 4. I'll just say that flat out. I think they're better, both the uprights, the grands. Electrics, I think, are a draw. Organs are a draw. Synth could be a draw, depending on what you're trying to do. I've built some beautiful synth sounds for the Nord Stage 4. I have not had as much time to do that on the V-Stage, but I'm sure it would be possible. So I don't want to discredit that just because I haven't spent as much time with the synth section on the V-Stage. Now, when it comes to the cost, that's another big part. We talk budget. The V-Stage, I think that's between the $3,000 to $4,000 range. The Nord Stage 4 is up towards the $6,000 range. Depending on what models you get, of course, could go down or up a little bit there, but the Nord Stage 4 is definitely more of an investment than the V-Stage. So what do you get for that? Is it worth that extra money? And a lot of people would say, well, probably not. For me, I would say yes, because of the quality of the piano sounds, some of the features and how the board functions and the agility it has for that live performing aspect, and just the overall workflow of building sounds is just better to me on the Nord Stage 4. Now, that's not to say the V-Stage isn't good, right? So we talked about that in the last video about the V-Stage, is it has a lot of great, powerful features for church, and it lands down in that $3,000 to $4,000 range that really is probably gonna sit better in budget. So when we look at this from a long-term investment perspective, if you're not just swapping keyboards out every year, does the V-Stage or the Nord Stage 4 win in the respect of what you're getting for the money? I think both of them have their benefits. So I know from experience, Nord continues to release OS updates to fix bugs, add new features. They released new sounds for the Nord piano library and the sample library. They just released new strings last year, electric piano. I think the felt grand was fairly recently, soft grand. So they're always adding new sounds to their library, which you can just download right onto the board. It's very easy to share programs. And on the Roland V-Stage, it's a little early in the cycle for me to say, oh yeah, they're gonna release OS updates to fix bugs and introduce new features. There's some little things I don't like in the interface and I'm hoping they change, but it's a little early for me to say whether or not they're gonna continue to release updates over time, whereas I know the track record of Nord and that they do that. So when it comes to sounds, yes, you can bring new sounds onto the V-Stage. You can bring scenes in from other people. You can bring tones in. I would say it's not as intuitive to do as it is on the Nord Stage 4. The Nord Stage 4 it has the sound manager, which is a great interface, just works really well. And it's easy to bring those samples onto the board and use them within your programs. On the V-Stage, it's a little bit clunkier to bring those in. You use a thumb drive, your folder structure allows the V-Stage to see those different components, but you have to make sure that's set up correctly. And then to me, the Roland interface to get sounds and things like that is just, it's not as intuitive as the Nord. That's not to say it doesn't exist though. So again, early on in the life cycle here, it could be Roland will come out with more. I think it's a little early to really confirm that. I'm excited about the potential, the opportunities that Roland does have to really push updates out, push new sounds out. So I'm hoping they do, but it's a little early to say that they're going to or not going to. Whereas with the Nord Stage 4, I can pretty definitively say they're going to continue to improve and provide new sounds that you can use on this keyboard for the next 5+ years, right? And with the Nord Stage 4, it's been 2.5, 3 years from when this was released. It probably has at least that before they come out with the Nord Stage 5 or whatever would be next after this line here. So life left on the Nord Stage 4 for sure. Reliability-wise, little early to tell on the V-Stage. I think Roland makes good products. Nords, I've never had an issue with in the years I've been playing these live. So for me, Nord and Roland are probably, I don't want to speak too early on the Roland, but I would say maybe the Nord has a bit of an edge when it comes to bringing new sounds on and continuing to keep the sounds updated. OS, I don't know yet. And so I think it's close to a draw, but I think the Nord Stage 4 pulls ahead. So for you, as you're looking at this and you're watching this video and you're saying, well, that doesn't really help me because they're very similar. I would say the best thing I can recommend is number one, know what your budget is for your church. Because if your budget's $3,000 and you're looking at a $6,000 Nord, that's probably going to be a hard no, but it may be a conversation to say, hey, what is it giving us then that we could push out the budget for the next keyboard a little bit further to allow us to get a Nord? Or you may look at the V-Stage and say, that's going to work. It's going to be perfect for our use case. And the other thing I would say is if you can, have your keyboardist go play both of these. I know that's not a possibility for some of you or a lot of you out there, but if you do have the opportunity to play these, go play them and see how your keyboardists feel with them. They're both going to be a little intimidating right off the bat, but hopefully this video is helpful. For me, in the end, I would say the Nord Stage 4 is the winner. For me, it's the one that I choose to take. The V-Stage will probably sit in my studio the majority of the time, and I don't really foresee a reason that I would need to take this instead of the Nord Stage 4. So I'll continue to use the Nord Stage 4 live anytime I'm playing, but it doesn't mean the V-Stage is bad. If that's where your budget's at, I think this is the best on the market within that budget for what you're getting in a keyboard. So there's other things, audio interface, things like that I don't think matters much from a church perspective. So I haven't dwelt on those in this video, but I would say definitely if your budget is the V-Stage budget, then this is the best of what is in that budget. It just has the most amount of features, sounds, and everything. The layout is close to the Stage 4. So if that's where your budget's at, I'd say the V-Stage is a great option. If you could spend a little more, I would go up to the Nord Stage 4. You're not going to regret it. And there's a lot here that I think as you start to use it, you're going to be glad you spent the extra and invested in a board like the Nord Stage 4. Again, that's my opinion. If I were to buy these, and I bought both these personally, these were not sent to me. For me, if I were to do it all over again, I would get the Nord Stage 4, not the V-Stage. It's a great board, but for me personally, I prefer the Nord Stage 4. I hope this video was helpful or even just fun for you to listen along. It was a lot of me talking, so I'm gonna just play a couple of sounds here to end out this video. Let me know if you have any questions. Throw those down in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Stay inspired and keep making that music.